Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you to Karen Williams for preparing tonight's presentation, to Ryan Leonard for all his technical help, to our new friends who helped us figure out how to get on the Wi-Fi, and to the folks at the church for letting us use the space. Before we begin, I just have a few announcements.
Sorry,
Yeah.
was I supposed to?
Our next seminar is March 11th in our seminar series. It's called Religion and LGBTQ plus Acceptance, and it's at the same location, same time, March 11th. Please save the date. For June 10th, we will be having a Pride Festival in Nation City this summer. We have some information about it over there by the snacks. If anyone has a business or a friend who has a business or anyone personally sponsored, we're looking for sponsorships to host a Pride Festival. And it will be from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. right by the Ocean City High School football field, the auxiliary field, so 6th Street. Okay. And there's going to be a lot of details coming for that very soon. And we do have snacks, water, bracelets for free, stickers for free. There are some other stickers though, and I guess that if you're interested are $3 gifts. So those are my little announcements. And in case you don't know, Karen Rush, she just announced that she is going to be a candidate for District 2. So say hi. And we're happy that she's here. Thank you. Happy to be here. Okay. And Karen, if you're ready, if you're not ready, that's okay. I can keep talking.
We move this over to there.
Yeah.
So that, but I have my hand shut, so I can't really do much.
Watch out. Up and
Okay, I
over.
can lift
More.
Yeah.
Okay.
That looks good. Let's
Okay.
put my thing.
Watch the cords.
I think I probably have enough charge by now.
Okay.
Let me see. See what I can do. How do I get the full screen? Am I not in charge of this? Sorry. Oh. My students always laugh at my lack of ability to do this stuff, even though I've been, all right. Well, can I move the? It's no big deal. We'll figure it out. There we go. It's good. Hi. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming out on a Saturday night. So I have carpal tunnel, which means my thumb hurts really badly, but I'll probably take this off and on half a dozen times because it's also annoying to me, which I'm doing it right now. But the screen.
I think the network's out. I went to no service.
Oh, there we go.
Maybe it's just me. It's very possible it's just me.
Oh, that's weird.
No, network's not out.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll get this rolling now that I'm in charge. Now I took that off. So Hi, my name is Karen Williams and I teach at Mainland Regional High School. And I also teach at Stockton University in the Women, Gender and Sexuality program. And I have been working for a while, educating about LGBTQ history and gender studies. And actually at Mainland, we have next year, we're going to have a dual credit with Stockton University as a having a dual credit gender studies course at Mainland. So that's really exciting to have, because then the students can get college credit while taking a gender studies course. So tonight I'm going to talk about local LGBTQ history and its impact on a national and international scale. Some people might think, oh, we're just little Cape May County. What could we possibly have that would influence, the nation or the world? But we actually have a lot of things. So, but first off, I want to ask people if you could, like, when you think of LGBTQ history, when you think of LGBTQ, activism, big moments, legal things, what names come to mind, or what events come to mind?
Locally or?
Just in the world, like locally, or like in the country. Like when you think pride, what comes to mind? Larry Kramer, yes. Well, hello.
Sorry.
That's all right. So Larry Kramer, who was a AIDS activist and was one of the founders of ACT UP, and he passed away a couple of years ago, I believe. And he was also a playwright. What's your name?
Joanne.
Joanne, nice to meet you. So yeah, so Larry Kramer, huge, but he was very, very big in ACT UP, which was the group that really changed the way dealing with AIDS and HIV, and changed the way the FDA got prescriptions and medicine through the approval stages.
Gene Robinson, who was the first openly gay bishop in the Episcopal Church of the USA.
Oh, wow.
Big deal.
Yes.
Very vocal, very advocate, very much an advocate. In that tradition, Church of Art.
And that's the Episcopal Church?
Yes.
Dave? Who's that? Oh, okay. Ah, you know what the P stands for? She would say, pay you no mind, or none of your business. Marsha P. Johnson. Actually, Marsha P. Johnson almost made it into my slideshow because she is from North Jersey, Elizabeth, I believe. And she was a trans advocate. And there is a statue of her in, again, I think she's Elizabeth, New Jersey. So, and she was, she died in 1999, I think, and it was ruled a suicide, although they've reopened the case, and the thought is that it was probably not a suicide. And there's a really great documentary on Netflix called The Death and Life of Marsha P. Johnson. So yes, but a big trans advocate, rumored to have been at Stonewall, but may or may not have actually thrown the first shot glass at Stonewall. Although if she was asked about it, she certainly took credit for it several times. So, obviously, hopefully the answer is yes, or that we can assume that the answer is going to be yes, because Atlantic City and Philadelphia are the local history I'm going to talk about. Now, two things that come to mind usually when thinking about gay rights and gay activism are the Stonewall riot, which happened in 1969 in New York City, where it still is a gay bar in New York City that the police had a history of closing down, just closing down gay bars, would go in, harass the customers. They would be arrested, be released the next morning, and it would just continue on that way. And that particular night, it was 1969, it was June, it was particularly hot, and the police raided the bar, but this time the patrons did not leave. And they wound up rioting. Now, in the, so they wound up rioting. And at one point, the police were inside the bar, protecting themselves from the outside protesters. And it's a Christopher Avenue in the village, and the police would sort of push the protesters away, and they would run around the block and then come back. Because it was New York City, it was just sort of like they would loop around. And from there, that is considered the birth of the modern pride movement, because so that was 1969, 1970, there was the Christopher Street parade to honor it, and then it began, and then it has turned into the pride that we know. And it took place in June, which is why Pride is in June. So, and also and there's a connection to Philadelphia and Atlantic City, which I'm going to point out. But these are the two big things. The other one was Obergefell versus Hodges, which is marriage equality. When the Supreme Court ruled 5-4 that marriage was a right that all American citizens should be able to enjoy. And it, so that was that ruling. And as I said, 5-4, and this past year, the respect for marriage was signed into law. So hopefully it doesn't get turned back. So, I mean, I say that so like, well, hopefully. So local moments with national impact that I'm going to talk about. Well, I'm going to go through it, but this way kind of get a sense of what hopefully I get to cover tonight. Now, Philadelphia, it's close enough. It's not, many of us are maybe from Philadelphia. My family, although I was born in Ocean City, my dad and my grandparents are from Philadelphia, and you can see I'm a Phillies fan. So in Philadelphia, interestingly, prior to Stonewall, there were two major events in Philadelphia that happened before Stonewall. And Stonewall is always acknowledged, or fittingly, it was a huge thing, but there's other things that should be written into the, our public knowledge about the LGBTQ struggle. The first you'll see up on there is the Dewey's sit-in. And in 1965, in Philadelphia, in Rittenhouse Square, are where the gay community would hang out. And there was a sandwich store that was down the street where young gay people would go to. And they, it says Dewey's sit-in protest against simply looking gay. So if this person walked in and looked gay, they didn't quite fit the gender stereotype, the people at Dewey's could kick them out. And they staged a protest, and as it says, an early victory for LGBTQ rights. So that was 1965, 4 years before Stonewall. Then we have the annuals, which they took place in front of Independence Hall in Philadelphia to remind everyone what the Constitution, what the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution promised all citizens, not just straight citizens. So there were four years worth of protests, but you'll see that they were July 4th, Independence Day, and from 1965 to 69. But then the following years when they had the Christopher Street Parade, and they decided, well, we don't need to have, we're going to combine our efforts because it was so close. So those are two very important things that happened in Philadelphia. Again, before Stonewall. And yes, I am the classic Philadelphia person who feels, always want to prove why we are just as good as, if not better than New York City. Also, so when you go into Philadelphia, you cross a bridge called the Walt Whitman Bridge. And Walt Whitman, so it was 1953 that the Walt Whitman Bridge was built and named. And Walt Whitman was born in Camden, and he was a gay man. He was a gay poet, the father of American poetry. So you could see some of the controversies, some ministers, that his writings conveyed a revolting homosexual imagery that permeates the fetid whole. That another minister complained Walt Whitman himself had neither the noble stature nor quality of accomplishments that merits this tremendous honor, and his life and works are personally objectionable to us. And interestingly, 90% of the people who wrote in from New Jersey disliked him, and 77% of the people who were from Philadelphia liked him. So who knows? And the person who had promoted having him as to be named for the bridge, or the bridge named for him, said he holds an honored place in our history, and they found no evidence Whitman was homosexual. It's kind of funny because he was very clearly homosexual. If anyone has ever read any of his poetry, it's very gay. And I teach at Mainland, and a few years ago, a couple of kids gave me the word that I had a very homophobic student in my class. So I called up a friend of mine and I said, who's a professor at ACCC, and I go, Rich, you got to give me the biggest, gayest Walt Whitman poem you can give me. And he's like, okay. So, and then there was a poem, it's actually named for, it looks like those, like the cat tails or whatever, because it's a very phallic, calamus. It's a very phallic imagery. And so I taught that. And we called it rest of the year, our big gay poem. So there's a few things for Philadelphia, and stop me if you have any questions. Tell me if there's anything I should be saying. So now so that's Philadelphia. And then this Edie Windsor is also Philadelphia, but she's also very connected to the Obergefell marriage equality ruling, because in 2013, she sued the government because, as you could see up there, she was hit with a $363,000 tax bill because she was married to her partner 2007 to 2009. They'd been together for 44 years. Then New York made it was legal to get married. So they got married, but the state or the government didn't recognize it. So she got hit with that tax bill. And they had been together for 44 years. They were both incredibly successful. She worked for IBM. Thea was a world-renowned therapist and psychologist, and they were very, very well off, and they were hit with that tax bill. So she took the government to court, and that you could see that. So the Defense of Marriage Act, which was signed into law in 1996, made it that a marriage could only be between one man and one woman. And it was one of the few laws that was specifically made in order to condone and codify discrimination in the modern era, I suppose. So there's Edie. She was an amazing, amazing woman. As you could also see, she was born in Philadelphia. She went to Temple, and she spent her summers in Atlantic City. So growing up, she spent her summers in Atlantic City because that's where a lot of people from Philadelphia would go. And then she which is, she said, after my discovery of Snake Alley, my eyes had become much more attuned to the hidden gay sexual energy in crowds around me. So there you go. New York Avenue. So that's the Claridge. I didn't realize the Claridge, and I've lived here my whole life. I didn't realize that the Claridge was a hotel before it was a casino. So the Claridge was the beach in front of the Claridge was the gay beach in Atlantic City. So it was really the heart of the gay community in Atlantic City. And the reason is because at the top, it looks phallic. That's why that was the beach that became very popular to go to. And I do note the irony that I am talking about gay bars and such in a church. But also to clarify the importance of gay bars within the gay community, it was really one of the only places, gay spaces, where people could go and be safe. So it was more than just a place to have alcohol. It was more than a place, to watch, to do what, more than just a bar. It was really the place that you could go to be safe with fellow gay people. So this is the heart of gay Atlantic City, New York Avenue. It was called Snake Alley because it was a very windy, narrow streets. The first gay bar was opened in 1925, and no sign, you just had to know it. And it was, so Atlantic City was one of the, not premier, I don't think that's really the word, but it was the destination for the gay community, like before Provincetown, before New Hope, before Rehoboth. Like, this was where people went. So it really was so you could see Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York, and beyond, and where you could have safe interaction with, a gay community. Now, that's a lot of words that will so of course, where there was gay people, there was controversy. There were people coming and saying that gay people were bad. This was a dangerous thing. We can't have this. So, the ABC, I think it's alcohol. Was that alcohol beverage? Yes. They started cracking down on gay establishments. Interestingly, a good way to research the history and the movement of the gay community is through the ABC documents, because they track all the bars that they closed, and they tracked all the reasons why they closed them and the amount of times that they closed them. So you really can learn an awful lot from just reading those documents. But so you could see, like, it up there, that warn that homosexuals are dangerous and lesbians prey on the weak. So Atlantic City got into the action of trying to shut down the gay bars, especially the gay bars and the gay community that was opening up in their area. And you could see, the Social Action Committee of the Ministerial Association of Greater Atlantic City warned that the homosexual situation was acute. And I just love this quote where it says, it is in the plumage that you recognize the bird. So you can tell someone's gay just by looking at them. Now, tying back to the connection to Stonewall and how Stonewall really changed so much because of the protests. Val's was a bar in Atlantic City that did it the year before. It was not a big showy thing. There was no protest, but Val's took the ABC to court. And you could see the case formerly formal, I think I should formal, anyway, known as 111 Wines and Liquors versus the Division of Alcoholic Beverage, ended up before the state Supreme Court. Looking back, Val's Supreme Court victory seems to have propelled the growth and centralization of gay space in Atlantic City. And Val's became a regional symbol of gay resistance to government attacks. So rather than the protest that took several days in New York, that then wound up being Pride as we know it, they took them to court. And because they just were continuously being closed down. So that's kind of, I don't know. Does anyone have any questions so far?
What did they give us the reason for closing them down? Was there a law against anything that was happening?
Yes. Well, I don't even think they tried to say, oh, well, they're not serving, their bathrooms aren't clean. They just were saying that you could tell that people were gay there and they were closing it down.
And was it illegal to be gay? This is, what are we talking about, the 60s?
60s, yeah. The 50s and the 60s. Yeah. That, for example, the 1925, so the Entertainers Bar, so Louisa Mack's bar, she made everyone dress nicely. Everyone had to wear suits and ties. They were not allowed to kiss or dance on the dance floor because she didn't want to draw attention to the fact that they were gay. By the time the 60s rolled around, and Val's was a place where they didn't stop people from, dancing and kissing and doing whatever, it was that they were gay people interacting together. So I guess, yeah, it was because I don't know.
Yeah,
If it was illegal, or was it just that?
I don't like what you're doing, so I'm shutting you down.
Yeah.
They have to justify it. Is it like a morality clause?
Yes. So morality clause. And because there were so many people, because they were afraid it was going to damage their town, that it was going to damage, it was gonna. And the thing is, the reason why Snake Alley was allowed to sort of exist for so long is because it was in a seedier part of town. So there were other things going on that the gay bars just kind of slid in between the two, there was gambling halls and there's prostitution and all that other stuff. So it just sort of was like, oh, and there weren't a lot of signs and people were trying to keep it very quiet. And also in the 70s, when the Atlantic City really fell upon economic hard times, there was just so much destitution there that I don't think people just kind of didn't notice. In 1969, so Val's in 1968, so Val's becomes like a national treasure to the gay community. So people start coming to go to Val's, and there's a long line out the door. Like, it was nearly impossible to get into Val's. So there were other bars on that street that were not gay bars that asked to be converted to gay bars. So by 1969, there were 8 or 9 gay bars on that street that, because, and then they all became popular because you had these straight bars looking and going, well, that bar is making a ton of money and I want to make the money. And so yeah, it was a pretty great time. But then the casinos rolled in and just sort of steamrolled everything. So that really was the height. The 70s was like the crescendo. And then when the casinos rolled in and they just, took away any local color. But yeah, just because they were being together in an adult space, where doing what, Yeah, I know.
There was a comment or two online. Is it possible to see those?
Oh, it's,
Sure.
wait, already know this one.
Mm.
Okay. Wasn't sure.
And Harvey Milk was the first publicly elected gay politician in the United States in San Francisco, who's called the mayor of Castro, the Castro district. And I was going to talk about the Castro also, because most people, they think of New York and they think of San Francisco. But then I decided to kind of, there's so much history that I wanted to try to have some sort of interesting narrative, the kind of cohesive narrative, I should say. But I heard somebody say that he was assassinated. He was killed while in office. And the man who killed him, Dan White, who had served in the public with him, and he killed him, and he also killed the mayor of San Francisco. And Dan White was let off on a very, very short, he had a very short sentence. And they said it was called the junk food defense, because during this stretch of time, he became so upset that he just ate a lot of Twinkies and Snickers bars. So he didn't have quite the nutritional value that he should have been having. So because he ate junk food, they're like, oh, well, of course he killed Harvey Milk. So yeah, so Harvey Milk, he says this really great speech called the Hope Speech, which is really wonderful. And I try to teach that. So yes. Here's an interesting little bit that, Miss America pageant, for all of us who grew up here, very, very big part of Atlantic City and South Jersey, the South Jersey experience. And the Show Me Your Shoes was actually happened because drag queens would yell to the contestants to show them their shoes. And then it became a thing, and it became like the big part, like the parade, I guess, on Thursday night would be Show Me Your Shoes. So I found that really interesting. Did people know that? I didn't. I know a lot about the pageant, but I was like, that is so fun. So there was a big drag queen scene in Atlantic City. There's a book called AC Drag, an examination of femininity, because it compares the Miss America pageant with the drag queen scene. So I found that quite fun. Now, we also in New Jersey, in our area, we have Cape May, the city of Cape May, which is, again, another place that was very much a gay destination. Now, it was very, as you could see, it was, it was quiet. It was not as popular as a place, as it is now, I guess. Like, I think it kind of went through a revival, but and I was just talking to a friend of mine's father who's in his 80s, and he grew up in Cape May. And when we were talking about this, he said that he remembers seeing signs about getting the gays out because there were too many gays coming to the town. And so they passed a law making it illegal for men to wear short bathing suits on the city's beaches. There was a law that said that you couldn't wear a Speedo up till 12. You were allowed to wear a Speedo. If you were a boy or a man over the age of 12, you were not allowed to wear a Speedo. So they hoped that would keep, gay people out. And they gave, as you can see, policemen with rulers and tape measures in order to enforce. I know.
Good job.
Yeah.
Amazed at the stupidity.
So, yes. So that, and now Cape May is, I mean, it's not a very gay town, but it has a good population there. And in the 90s, there was the creation of a group called the Gables, which is a gay and lesbian association. And I'm very excited because on March 4th, I am going to spend the day with one of the founders of that organization. So there'll be LGBTQ history part 2, perhaps. I'm going to get to sit down with a man named Vince, and I forget his last name at the moment. He was one of the founders of the group, and another man who was another one of the original people. So I'm going to get to hang out on March 4th with 2 gay men in their 80s, and they're just going to tell me all the stories. So, and a friend of mine and I are going, and we're super excited. So we'll get to learn a lot more about that. Beach is not Cape May, but it is a man in a Speedo. So I think I went. So, does anyone have questions? I mean, there's so much more information. As I said, I tried to create some sort of conversation. Or if you have questions about just other things in New Jersey, or pretty much. Yeah.
So I'm from Cape May area.
Okay.
And so what made the majority of the gay population leave Cape May? Because I keep begging them to come back so they can save the city.
Yeah. So there's not too many there now?
I mean, there is, but I mean, there's a lot of things going on in Cape May that I'm hoping that it has a good amount of year-round residents that are trying to fight a lot of stuff. And I'm like, you know, if the gays just came here, they would save all the houses. They would,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be as going on rampant with the tourists. Like, there's a lot of parking and traffic issues in Cape May. I don't think we can fit another hotel or tourism, and I'm thinking,
Yeah, and maybe maybe if the gays come, then it'll scare away some of the other people.
and
I say that, you know,
happy with that.
Like, you know, obviously I'm saying that in an ironic way, because, you know, I'd be more than happy to go there.
At the end, they be cool to hang out.
Yeah, because there is, well, what I'm excited about, as I said, like, I'm gonna go and spend some time with two of the men who started the Gables, and to find out. And there's also a new group called Yes. And that's who hooked me up with Vince and the other man. So I always, like, growing up, I always heard Cape May was gay, but I didn't really know, because I worked at Lower Cape May Regional for 4 years. But other than that, I really know very little about Cape May, which I know sounds terrible, I suppose.
So when I was in college, I was meeting with one of my college professors, and we're just talking about where I was from, and I told him I was near Cape May as like a example, and he's like, "Oh, Cape May," and then he makes a big deal, maybe that's where all the gay people go, and I'm like, "Is it?" I'm like, I never, like, it is, and I figured he had it confused with someplace else, because that was never something that I knew, and I'm like, why are you even mentioning that to me later on? I'm like,
Right.
it's just a weird thing to say. But, because yeah. So in the 90s, I guess, it must have had that reputation, maybe from people outside of our area, but I never realized that until recently with the groups that I've learned about.
Yeah, and I learned about the Gables, but I don't know, but yeah, it's like an ongoing learning about, because actually, when I first started this process, I thought, oh, I'm gonna get a lot of information about Cape May. But then really, it was Atlantic City that I had no idea, such a huge. It was huge, the importance of it. But like I said, how the casinos came in and really wiped that part out. And there was also a huge African-American experience in Cape May, I mean, in Atlantic City. I mean, it was an incredibly segregated town, but there was there was, we'll call Chicken Bone, which I think it's Chicken Bone Beach. So there was a big community there. Like I said, but it was segregated, but nevertheless, there was very much that was there. So, but both of those, I feel like both of those stories have been lost. And it would be nice to get it back. Because, I mean, the story of Val's is really such, I wish more people knew about the story of Val's, because that's, I mean, they successfully sued and successfully beat the police intimidation. Yes.
I was wondering if Val's became Shapery. The Shapery nightclub on your government was huge.
Oh, really?
60s and early 70s. Biggest dance place. There were 2 levels there. Straight people went there too. It was mostly gays. But I wondered if the same thing.
Shay what, I'm sorry? Marie.
John, Jack asked if you could tell the story of one of the founding fathers of Ocean City that helped defend the Cayman.
Who asked that?
John.
Well, I know the story of John Wesley, who was the founder of the Methodist Church, who one of his either classmates or when he was at Oxford, because John Wesley was at Oxford University and he studied in Lincoln College at Oxford. And there was, as I said, a friend or an associate who was arrested for breaking sodomy laws. And John Wesley sat with him while the man was in jail and supported him. I'm not 100% sure about what he could do as far as the church was concerned, but he gave compassion for the man who was arrested in jail for the sodomy law, for breaking the sodomy laws. So whether or not he was able to, what exactly he did for him, but I do know that he showed compassion, which I think ultimately is what all of this, I'm hoping for. But the compassion for the man, not just, oh, you're in jail, you did something that is supposedly against our scripture. But if one of the founding Ocean City people, does the person know more specifics of the name?
Just a lawyer, I said, like, living there since then.
William Penn, when he knocked down the sodomy laws, when he signed the charter, whatever, for Pennsylvania, there was some sodomy laws that were on the books, and he knocked them off the books. So, that's kind of interesting. There's so much. I feel like I've talked.
I have a question for you.
Yes,
So,
please, thank you.
how do you identify a community that would be welcoming or accepting or friendly to the LGBT community? Does that mean you can buy a store and open your store there? You have a restaurant that's open, you can serve on the council? I mean, how would you identify a community? I mean, for instance, I know Collingswood has
Yes.
become known as a welcoming community.
Yes.
Cape May AC, yeah, they've been like that for quite a while, I think, but there are New Hope, you mentioned Provincetown, et cetera.
That's
But
great.
how would you identify that or define that?
I think Well, I know from myself for like Ocean City. I know that when I was growing up, like I was born and raised there. And in the 70s and the 80s, like I knew there were many gay people that I knew in the community that owned stores and were active members of the community that people knew were gay. Now, granted, I was a child, so I didn't hear if there were negative talk about them. But, but I would say giving them an opportunity to, not be judged. Yeah, just live the life because, we have, freedom of speech and freedom of religion. And that, and and this will be what the next one will be about, the different interpretations of what the Bible says. And then some people who don't even believe in the Bible. So why should their lives be ruled by a book that they're not even partaking in? So, yeah, just, and if they're good people who give money, not give money, but who bring positive things to the community, I think that's a very reasonable thing. And it's a shame that people don't give that opportunity. It's a shame that we have to have, I mean, this is cool, but to have these sort of conversations in order to show people that it's just like everybody else. Yes.
I could be like, you came to town, my interpretation of what it would look like, it would be, in the schools, they would be supporting kids and, they have a gender studies class and, prison club and be supporting that way. How things are in towns, who can you build community? It's always, little things. There wouldn't be people in the town saying, oh, well, we're not gonna let them, the gays have a business because, it would be, it doesn't matter who you are, everyone can have a business and support. Couples would walk down the street, whether they be 2 men, 2 women, a man and a woman, someone, a transgender person together, and they could walk down the street and no one's gonna look at them and then go to church on Sunday and then have a sermon about, oh gosh, look at these people in our town, there wouldn't be those side conversations and side impacts and everything within the town. And I think that's what my little vision of a utopian town of exactly, not just putting a sticker on your window, that says great to show support, but just to have that actual support and not have to always have to feel that they have to defend themselves and feel under attack and just be free of who they are and not think twice about it, just be totally comfortable.
And I think it would be wonderful to have, if everyone looked at the biggest, like, say, this town, like look at Ocean City, let's just say, what do we want that's best for the town? We want all the children to be healthy, mentally stable. We want all the kids to have a safe space, that they are healthy, etc. And then we want people to get along with each other. And okay, so how do we accomplish that? Rather than looking at like what's the ultimate goal? The ultimate goal is for us to have a healthy community. And what's the best way to do that? So we all agree we want a healthy community. We might disagree on how we're going to get there, but let's see if we can figure out a way to get there together. And, and maybe learn, I mean, I'm all about education. So it's like, okay, if we're going to discuss religious texts, well, let's read them. And let's have a discussion about them. And let's show, okay, this is what I think about it. This is what you think about it. Okay, rather than just quoting one verse to me, let's read the whole book. And let's talk about the whole book. And let's talk about Leviticus. Let's talk about everything in it, not just one verse. Let's talk about Genesis, not just one verse. And, maybe someone will educate me, and I'll educate them, and we'll come to a consensus. And maybe if people see, and this is only if you don't have to believe in the Bible. I'm not saying you do. I teach the Bible because it gives me an ability to tell kids if they're told that they're, an abomination, or if they're going to hell. I tell them, well, that's not really what it says, or let's, to help them not be so damaged by these mean words.
So in a community that's healthy and whole, everyone should be treated fairly and justly,
Yes,
and we can agree to disagree without being disagreeable.
yes. And kind, we could be kind and compassionate,
Compassion.
and just,
Kind of like, you're able to have your beliefs and everything, but your beliefs cannot intrude on my safety or the health of the community. Everybody's always wanting to make everybody else conform to one thing. And that's not gonna happen.
yeah, Billy, do you know the actor Billy Porter? Billy, he's an LGBTQ actor. He was in Pose, just this brilliant actor. He said, he was in Kinky Boots, and he said that he, someone can believe anything they want, they could do whatever they want. I have no problem with if you like me or you dislike me, you just can't legislate me out of existence. And that's what, when the legislation comes in to legislate me out of existence, that's where the problem is. And why? I guess that's it's not we all know, I don't know.
I think
And he was a member of the Communist Party from 1938 to 1941. And he quit the Communist Party. But when push came to shove, he would not renounce what he learned from his 3 years in the Communist Party. He did not agree with the Communist Party, but during those 3 years, he learned a lot about protesting and a lot about politics. So he would not renounce his membership in it because of what he learned. He also was a pacifist because he was a Quaker, and he did not, and he peacefully, conscientiously objected to going to war. And so he went to jail for that. So some of the reasons why it's considered why he is not known is because he was once a member of the Communist Party, he was a pacifist, and he was gay. So, brother outsider. So. Again, great. You know, he was from Westchester. Very interesting person, and sadly erased from the civil rights movement for a long time because of his being gay. So Walt Whitman. Gay. But it was fascinating to think that they named the bridge. I mean, it just, and most people, it's amazing that the bridge going into South Philly is named for Walt Whitman. Now, of course, Walt Whitman, he changed poetry between he and Emily Dickinson. Emily Dickinson broke it down to the most sparse amount of words possible, where she put in only the most perfect word, and Walt Whitman took it the other direction, and he put every single word he possibly could want in it. He just was like, kept saying it, kept saying it, kept saying it. So it was very, but they both changed poetry. So father of American poetry, and he was born in Camden.
Very,
Really?
yeah, he's the Farley Cemetery. Yeah. And back then, that's over the show.
So I'm very fortunate. I'm getting to work with the William Way Center in Philadelphia. It's the LGBTQ archives and LGBTQ community center and archives, and getting to go. I went there last month, and I'm going to be going back again. A second or third of these, looking at all the matchbook covers and flyers and menus from all gay establishments from the Philadelphia and South Jersey, big community in Camden. And again, I want to stress that talking about gay bars, it's that was where people could go and be safe together. It's not just, oh, there's where the alcohol is, or that's where the dancing is, but it was an area that people could be safe. And in the United States right now, I believe there are less than 20 lesbian bars in America. There is not a single lesbian bar in Philadelphia, and there's not many safe gay bars for African Americans in Philadelphia. So there's not a lot of, there's just an article in the Philadelphia Inquirer talking about the lack of lesbian bars in Philadelphia.
So do lesbians not go to gay bars?
Yes, they do, but it's more of a, like, if it's a gay bar, it's more like a men's gay bar that women go to, not just the lesbian spot. Yeah. I think there's just a different feeling to it. Like, now, yeah, I think that it's more for men, and women are there.
Well, that almost seems like a different sort of discrimination.
Yes,
Like there's not a safe place for women to go and
yes.
gather with similar types.
That's what I was just gonna say when I was in college. We, myself and my friends would go with my gay guy friends to this bar in Pittsburgh. And I think most of them here were straight. So, yeah, so sometimes when they go, so they have to deal with.
Yes.
Or
Yes,
they're just, you know, hanging out with their neighbors.
Yeah,
but gay women or lesbians
Yes.
don't have the same
yeah,
luxury or whatever you would call it.
yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're so cute. And there's a podcast of this group of like 20-somethings who did a pilgrimage to all the gay bars, all the lesbian bars. But there are not, the last one that was in Philadelphia was called Sisters, and that's been posted for 10 years.
so where's the closest one to our area? Would you belong to New York? Probably.
Yeah, New York, they'll be home. And all of a sudden it's like, you know, let's talk about, yeah, but that's
It's just, no, it is, and I think that's why I need to bring it up, but when the shootings happen.
Oh, at Pulse.
Passive bars,
Mhm.
that's the whole thing, it's the same place.
Right,
You feel like
right.
you beat the house, and then it just. Devastation.
yeah, and that, I mean, that's a good thing to bring it up, like Pulse, and then there was the one in Colorado, and yeah, and then recently, well, I guess the letter that I wrote to the editor of the Sentinel, in response to saying that there was the person that said that there was no, that there was no danger to be LGBTQ in the United States these days. But there, the amount of violence against the LGBTQ community in the last 2 years has skyrocketed. And, you know, these shootings, Pulse, and then the one in Colorado, I forget the name of that place. Yeah. So, yeah, there is so much violence and just intimidation and threats.
All you have to do is look at the suicide rate amongst young LGBTQ
Yes.
community and see the difference to the straight population. They're definitely being intimidated and bullied and
And then going back to Steve, right? Steve, the first name Steve? Dave, sorry, Steve.
Same.
Dave. Sorry, that going back to, you know, what's a perfect community? Or what can we all agree on? We agree on having our children be safe and healthy. And how do we do that? You know, if they're being intimidated or they're being bullied, then we need to figure out how to stop that. And sadly, it seems like in general is on a rise in this country. And, you know, mental health is, you know, these issues.
See what just happened on Bayville, New Jersey.
right.
What happened there?
Young woman was beaten up in the hallway, several days later, took her on. Yeah, but there apparently has been an environment, bullying there for a long time, right, ways. Big gatherings, the school boards, massive gatherings. Stir, upset, concerned.
Yeah, and like I've said before, many times about, you know, what we learn about gay kids is how to stop them from being bullied and how to stop them from killing themselves. But we don't talk about all the good things that come from being gay and all the resilience and the idea that, you know, being if you're a trans person, the idea that you have seen life through different perspectives and different lenses, and you could actually be way more empathetic and way more creative and way more of an asset to a company or to a whatever, because you've seen through, you know, as I've already said, like different perspectives, like your lens is different. And rather than saying that that's wrong, we should go, let's celebrate that. Because what can you bring to the table? How can you understand people? So, yeah, to celebrate and to just. But I guess if we could figure out a way to stop having people separate themselves and divide and conquer and fight, then a lot of problems will probably be resolved. And the way, so, so Marriage Equality Act. So in I point up there, because I put up there like 30 minutes ago, whatever. So in 2015, marriage equality, won a 5-4 decision. Then in 2000, 2 years before, the Defense of Marriage Act was knocked down. And in Vermont, around that time, a few years before that, Vermont was the first state to put into legislation for civil unions. So it wasn't officially marriage yet, but it was civil unions. And the woman who argued it in front of the Vermont Supreme Court told this story about imagining what it would be like to have, basically told the story of interracial marriage and how 50 years prior to that moment when she argued that in like 2009, that it was illegal for a Black person to marry a white person. And how now most people couldn't even conceive of that being illegal. And what this woman said is that is where we are now. And hopefully 50 years from now, people will look back on this moment and going, they can't believe that anyone ever thought that, you know, 2 women or 2 men married for a shot. So, you know, it was quite an amazing argument, and it wound up winning. So that was good.
They even had bipartisan support in
Yes,
Congress, which is highly unusual.
exactly. So, yeah. So there's hope. There has to be. So what's
I was interested in the religious aspect of it, because people use the Bible as a way of saying against homosexuality. There's a minister named Matthew Vines, have you heard of him? He's gay. And I can't remember if it's Methodist or Presbyterian, but he's had all kinds of speeches on YouTube. He goes over every verse in the Old Testament that mentions the word homosexuality, and it's 7 places. And he explains his interpretation, and it's very interesting. You know, like you said something about an abomination. It was an abomination for a man to cut his hair.
yes,
So I need to go through all that.
you couldn't wear mixed material clothing.
Yeah, there's,
You can't eat pork. You have
Yeah.
to treat your slaves nicely.
but
But the reason I say that is because, I mean, yes, but so then it's like, okay, what the Bible says I can have, you know, so what the Bible, those things that the Bible said, you know, like you're saying, they don't still apply.
But that so many explanations that need to be brought out for people to understand it. Because so many people hide behind the Constitution.
Exactly. And the Bible says absolutely nothing against lesbians. So lesbians are scot-free. So really, I don't know why, you know, I should be troubled.
First time for women, whereas usually it's the other way around.
Exactly. I'm like, but then it's all sorts of doing. But yeah, so I'm like, I'm free. Why am I having, why is anyone giving me a hard time?
Yeah.
Bible says nothing about me.
Well, I think, and I can't come up with that article, because Charlie has said, but I had an article where, really did a lot of research on it, and he went back to the Old Testament and Paul's, because that's the only thing to find it, you will find it in Jesus. Every time you're reading in those translations, then you go back to the Greek and Hebrew, it says, Paul was pretty talking about what was going on in terms of bad, that was probably about rape abuse, not about sexual relationship. And it's not even in there, but also what it is, if you go back to Hebrew and Greek, and in fact, German Bible
interpreted it that same way. The original amendment was voiced until 1916, and then they wanted a modern translation, but they didn't have anything to do it. So if an American get a product to do it, great, and that's when it's like, hey, just saying, I mean, that, and that's all that's worth.
Translated as
Oh, wow.
Not in the, if you go back in the. But then she was from for, you know, our next.
But our Bible.
Yeah.
Yes, and my friend who hopefully is going to be joining us, Marcia Fiedler, she is a professor of Jewish studies in Stockton. And if she can't, because it's Stockton spring break, so I took her not going on vacation. But she's been helping me with the early translations of the Bible and what the initial, what it says and how. So just to go back to the original source and to understand, like, and she's an expert in like rabbinic laws and just all of the context. We don't look at the context of what the Bible is saying. We just look at those clobber texts, those, you know, dangerous ones. And why, and the amount of, what I would really like to see is somebody figure out how much money it costs to even put up an anti-trans bill. And to see how much money is wasted by the government for these anti-LGBTQ and anti-trans laws. When only 10% of them even make it through. So that all this time and money is wasted on these laws that don't actually ever get passed. And I wonder if people actually saw how much that cost, if they'd be like, I don't really care that much about this issue. You know, because ultimately that was the thing about the main reason why the Defense of Marriage Act was knocked down was not because all of a sudden people thought, oh, it's okay. You think that that gay people would be married. It was because that they didn't like the fact that this woman was unfairly taxed $362,000. So that was the problem, because marriage offers a married couple gets 1,700 tax breaks and legal things to protect them that single people do not have. So really, that's what people are fighting for, not the fact that they can, well, I mean, yes, it would be nice. I mean, I'm trying to be cynical at the moment, but like, yeah, being married is nice, you know, being in love and all, but you want those 1,700 tax breaks and there's 1,700 protections under the law that you don't get if you're not legally married. And if you can't get legally married because you're gay, then we're denying people tax breaks. Everyone loves tax breaks. So I just narrowed down to like, you know, how much does it cost us? How much are these things costing us? So, but there's so much. I feel kind of bad that I forgot that. But there's so much, like Snake Alley is just a fascinating.
So I do have something about
Okay, good.
my cousin was on the line. She grew up in Atlanta. So she says the geography is important for State Valley. She said it ran from Patton Hall, but the real name was Presbyterian Avenue. It was 2 blocks from New York, and then another 2 blocks is in Claridge, which was a wider neighborhood experience. So she also said she remembers the brass rail and openly gave her on Snake Alley. It was a mixed crowd of casino employees nightly in the late 70s and early 80s. But then there's some things I'm not sure what she means, but I don't know if that's helpful or anything like that. She does say something about the shade parade. That's and the shade. 1978. So that's how it
that the orange blue now in that same area, but we'll call it Snake Alley? Is that the orange blue? I'm not sure. I don't know that much about the state. Because I'm not. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
Oh.
That's right.
Talking about.
Fucker.
But
Fucker, yeah. They're all-
And then the article that I got a lot of this information, and one of the resources, there was a writer named John McPhee who wrote about Atlantic City and the whole Trace the Monopoly thing, but he left out all the gay stuff, apparently.
I had a cousin who served about 30 years as a lifeguard, Atlantic City Detention. And he used to serve on New York Avenue. They used to call it, excuse the expression, City Beach.
Yeah,
Okay. And when I was a kid in high school, Pleasantville, I was, if you don't want to go to New York Avenue, kid, stay away from New York Avenue. If you don't want to go there, it's fine. And serious expression, the faggots are. And that was a kind of conversation, I think it was dominant in the 60s when I was young.
Literally, I grew up in Memphis, but lived in Atlantic City. Still here, all the office here, there were malls.
yeah.
In the '60s.
It's all those. And so I'm hoping. What my not new, but what my mission is, like, I have the goal, I'd like to write a book. And I'm going to really do a deep dive into the research and talking to people and going up to the William Way and looking through the archives and meeting with different people and people who lived through it, people who know things. And ask as many questions and write as many things as I can down. And actually a friend of mine, who is from Cape May, her mom owned the Cooper Guest House for years. And she's an artist. So we want to write a book where I write the history and she'll draw the facades of each one of the places. And, you know, a history of Atlantic City and Cape May, really South Jersey. And there's big gay beach scene in Rehoboth, but I don't really know that much about it.
One of the people you want to speak with is Ralph Hunter, African American.
Yes,
Went to a seminar last Saturday at Ocean City Library. This little light of mine talked about the Black church experience about South Jersey. He founded the African American Museum that is in Nome, Newtonville, whatever, Buena Vista, but also the one at the Moist Garage in Atlantic City. This guy knows his stuff.
yes.
He knows people who know their stuff. And he did excellent research.
And that's, I knew very, like, because I went to Stockton, I got a master's in American Studies, and we did a project for his museum. And I learned a lot about the idea of it being a segregated, you know, that there was a vibrant Black community, but very segregated. So, do you know my uncle, Bob Williams? No, he works at the museum sometimes, but he's a Methodist, retired Methodist minister. But because he sent me that, he knows Ralph Hunter.
Yes.
And he also sent me that link. But I was out of town last week.
You know, you talked about the interpretation, and there's always interpretation of scripture and the issue of sodomy. That's in the text, of course, people jump. It happened when the divine visitors were not welcomed in Sodom and Gomorrah. The ultimate action, just for unhospitality was Sodom. So, you know, about a healthy relationship here, or even a kindly relationship. We're talking about an attack on somebody because you want to get rid of them. It's one way to really say, ain't you, it's to do what you can do.
Yeah, it wasn't Sodom anymore that they actually, the reason why they were destroyed is because they were unhospitable.
That's a big hospitality.
So they were just,
And the ultimate in hospitality is. Interesting to see what comes out of this next conversation.
yes. There's so many jokes. But
Any other thoughts? So, yeah, there's, but, to go back to the early, about the, early founder of Ocean City, and then I talked about John Wesley, that when we, next month, I'll have more information about the John Wesley story, because I had the article about it, and I skimmed it, but I'll read it. I mean, I was more prepared for that session, because my focus is really, I'm Methodist, and my knowledge is of the Methodist Church, first and foremost. And I'm also working with, I go to St. Peter's and trying to get an LGBTQ outreach and ministry with that. That not, to create a safe space, to prevent abuse, to prevent depression, to help. This is these are, if this is a part of the community who are hurting, then isn't it, Christ's mission to help and to be kind and lift up those who are hurt. And whether or not you believe in Jesus or not, we should, if people are hurting, a church should be supporting them. In mind, most comfortable. So,
What kind of reaction do you expect to get, or have you already had discussions with the church?
yes, I've been, because one day when I was in church, and they asked if anyone wanted to volunteer for anything,
Yeah,
and I,
last Sunday.
yeah,
that
and
we're
I,
doing.
were you there?
The last Sunday I was.
So I reached out and I said, I'd like to volunteer, and this is what my specialty is. And, I have a long history with St. Peter's. My grandparents went there, my parents went there, my uncle, my cousins, they all, we're all members of the church. So I feel like it's a church that I am comfortable in, and it's not one that I don't want to rock anyone. I don't want to rock any boat. I don't want to disrupt things, but I also think that, if we're really following the mission of the church, then we should. And they're very open. We're in the early talks of, nothing of like, about changing the laws of the church or anything, but creating a safe space for people who might want to reconnect with, to create a safe space for LGBTQ in the community, and who want to reconnect with the church. And also to provide a safe space for people who might be hurting.
And I think that's particularly important in Ocean City, because there are some churches who are not so welcoming.
Yes.
And so I think it's so important to make that known. The kids are not even on this.
Yeah. And like, it's in the early parts, and I know that there's lots of politics and lots and lots of stuff that could come. So I'm very hopeful.
Mhm.
I know that they've been very kind, and also knowing that I'm going in with the idea that, like I said, I'm not trying to create a revolution in their church. Well, maybe I am, but not, I don't want to tear it down.
Mhm.
I just, yeah. Like I said, my grandparents started going to that church in 1955. So. So
What a history.
then we're gonna have a pride. June 10th, if you don't know already, we're having a pride in Ocean City. And that'll be fun.
Well, yes, lots of resources, lots of activities for kids. Music, fun games.
Well, thank you very much. I'm guessing this is, thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.